Now, you've developed an innovative way to test for COVID-19. Could you tell us how exactly it works?
Yes, the technology is fairly simple. First of all, we don't have a test, we have just a sample collector. Normally, what will happen is that people will be asked to sit back, and a very long stick with a piece of cotton at the back of it will be inserted in the back of the nose. It goes as far back as here, if you think about it from the front of your nose. This is quite painful and invasive, as you can imagine. What we have developed instead is literally a bottle-shaped device that you purse your lips over and you breathe into. And that device collects the vapor in your breath. Now, that vapor, we suspect, contains the virus as well as the genome of the virus. And therefore, that vapor, which is now taken out of that vessel, can be analysed for the presence of the virus. We're conducting these studies presently, and we're hoping to have results published as soon as possible if it's useful to replace the nasal test.
Now, as economies around the world plot how their population slowly gets back to work, one of the things people are toying with is, these antibody tests. Would your method work for that?
No. At this point in time, we don't have any data to suggest that we can detect antibodies in the vapor in your breath. We have detected proteins, but we haven't completed the steps as yet to say if antibodies are among those proteins. The antibody tests as well, one needs to approach this with a lot of caution. They're not necessarily going to work on everybody, and they're not necessarily able to tell apart one of the other 4 coronaviruses that are circulating in Europe and the United States that give you the common cold. So a positive might be a false positive, and it may give you a false sense of security. So we have to be very careful how we interpret this data.
So given that antibody tests are not reliable for now, what about sending people back to work? Should countries be more cautious about this? Like the French President Emmanuel Macron said, things cannot really go back to normal until you have a vaccine in place.
That is one option. The truth is we do not know if we will ever have a vaccine in place. We've had SARS in 2002, MERS later. We had 2 outbreaks of MERS. We've had 2 outbreaks of SARS. We still haven't got a vaccine. What we do know is that with highly transmissible and dangerous diseases, what we can do is put the containment measures in place to stop transmission. Ebola, which is devastating, transmits through body fluids. This thing transmits through aerosols and droplets. So it can transmit just by talking to each other. The best thing we can do is we can sustain the lockdown until there is no evidence of new cases appearing to hospitals for at least 2 weeks, and then open up slowly and carefully, allowing only the countries that have reached this milestone to have international travel so that we can really contain this virus. If we start too early, it's going to be a Pandora's box. We'll get a second wave.
And what about, possible treatments for COVID-19? Because we did have a lot of buzz being made around hydroxychloroquine. For the past few days now, we haven't heard a whole lot. Have you heard of that as possible treatment?
So last time I was talking to your program, hydroxychloroquine indeed was being presented as a potential panacea for this disease. Unfortunately, the news that has come since is that there are several cases of patients who suffer under the treatment of hydroxychloroquine and don't have a positive outcome. And the data with regards to positive outcomes are ambiguous still. At this point in time, this is not something that I would certainly consider for myself if I was in that state. There are a number of other antiviral treatments from other companies that are being attempted. The results are not as conclusive as yet. We are seeing that patients in general seem to be exiting intensive care sooner, but it could be because of what we call bias. It could be because the patients think they're responding and they're just rallying up. It could be the doctors are trying to help them get out better. We know this is a classical problem when we're doing studies like this. We need to get those objective data.
Okay.